Hello, everybody. And today's presentation will focus on differentiated instruction and its effect on the academic achievement of English learners. For this presentation, we will go into the introduction, the problem statement, the current trend analyze, the EdTech tool proposed, evidence for selections, the problem scenario, cost analysis, implementation, and of course, the summary. For this presentation, we will focus on the K through 12 sector as my work, as I work with elementary students in the kinder through fifth grade elementary. And this particular elementary is named Crawford Elementary, where we are currently servicing 610 students, of which 250 are identified as emergent bilingual. The problem statement for this presentation reads as follows. Post-pandemic state assessment results indicate that there is still significant learning loss, primarily in the area of mathematics. Standardized testing is prevalent with a new form of online state assessment in Texas. As educators, we need to ensure that students are being provided with targeted interventions that meet their academic needs to close such learning gaps. Oftentimes, we have numerous resources that are available to use. However, we may not know how to use them efficiently. By using individualized student tracking folders that will target students' low standards based on benchmark data, in conjunction with a learning progress educational program, we can provide targeted differentiated instruction that would lead our students to being more self directed and independent learners. The current trend being analyzed is, of course, the educational technology tool of progress learning. Progress learning is a wonderful educational tool that can be integrated into any classroom. Um, Particularly here at Crawford Elementary, we use it in conjunction with the individualized tracking folders. So basically, each of our students has in third, fourth, and fifth grade, as those are the assessed grade levels, um, our students each have an individualized tracking folder. So what happens is that after every reporting period assessment or 6 weeks test, as some of us may know, they get tested. Teacher has a one-to-one conference, and then there, within that conference, the teacher identifies exactly where it is that the students scored low on their test. Like, for example, what teak. So they identify the teak that they're still lacking. They identify that as one that they will be getting additional practice on by using the progress learning tool. And then, of course, this in itself, helps with the differentiation component in the classroom because, as we know, not all of our students lack the same standards. So we want to make sure that if a student is slow on place value and another one is low on multiplication, then there it serves no purpose to have them work on standards that they're not low on. So instead, those individualized tracking folders have identified their areas of refinement, what it is that they still need to work on, and then they go independently and work on progress learning where they can focus in on the particular standard that they're low on. As I previously mentioned, the educational technology tool being proposed is the use of progress learning and integrating it into the classroom. And the reason for that is because, as I mentioned before, it is standards aligned. So we know we're big here in the state of Texas because we have our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, also known as the TEKS, where those are used to measure exactly what it is that our students are supposed to know within a certain academic year. Of course, that's the ideal classroom that all of our students learn what their expectation is. However, realistically, we educators know that oftentimes, as much as we put in that effort to make sure that our students are learning exactly what needs to be learned, a lot of them struggle academically. So obviously, as the years go, those learning gaps may start off small, but if they're not addressed, then they just continue being exacerbated. And of course, we know that this COVID pandemic did not do this any good. We know that those learning gaps were further exacerbated by the pandemic, and thus the reason as to why our students are still not performing pre pandemic levels. The evidence for selection, I did speak to our panel or the participant panel, um, and all three of the participants did notice that there was a noticeable difference in students being eager to get their individualized folder and complete their assigned tasks. And, as the discussion went on, some of them mentioned that it's simply because they know exactly what it is that they're supposed to do. They open up that folder and the takes that they're supposed to work on have already been identified for them. So now it's just a matter of them going and logging into progress learning and completing and working on those assigned takes. As we mentioned, student growth is very, very important, especially in the accountability rating system. So our focus should always be student growth. Is our student growing? When our student is growing, that means our student is learning. When there's a little, stump and the student shows no growth, then evidently we need to figure out exactly what else we need to do to help them get over that little hurdle. And then, of course, our goal, as many of the, several panel members discussed, was the goal is to ultimately develop our students into independent learners. They shouldn't rely on the teacher telling them exactly what it is that they're supposed to be doing every single second of the day. Instead, we want them to be independent. We want them to be self driven. We want them to be able to self monitor their learning. And we know that the Progress Learning platform, along with the tracking folders, help our students become self monitors. They become more aware of what they are struggling with, and they're able to focus on their areas of refinement. Application to the specific problem or scenario. Well, the big keyword here: differentiation, 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 and some more differentiation. The bigger question is, how do we go about making sure that our students are receiving that differentiated instruction? Well, let's look no further. We know that with differentiation and the integration of e learning platforms such as Progress Learning and used in conjunction with individualized student tracking folders, teachers can target any academic learning gaps that may be affecting and hindering our students' success. So, again, progress learning is a great educational tool that we can use to differentiate. Why? Because prior to the students knowing what it is that they will be working on, the teachers have to have met with them in one-to-one conferences, have to have identified the teaks or the standards that they're going to be working on. So that in itself is a big component in differentiation, because not all of our students need the same. So when we meet with them, when we identify what they're still needing, we are in essence differentiating instruction to meet their academic needs. The cost analysis, now let's not be alarmed. We know that as school districts, we're always looking to find a good investment. We want to get a good bang for our buck, right? So basically, we have a pricing guide here of the different campus sizes. So it would just vary depending on how large the campus is. I know that for the most part, the campus, Crawford Elementary, is part of that medium school, um, where we have, as I mentioned, over 600 students. So we do have the program going for reading, math, and science. So it just really depends. They have single subjects, they have subject bundles, and then, of course, all subjects. So, pricing just varies depending on the size of the campus, depending on the size of the district. That's going to make the purchase. But one thing to remember, as I mentioned, is we want to make sure that it's a good investment for for the students, because we are here for them. We want to make sure that they're learning, or it's aligned to what the expectations are. So this particular program does is standards aligned. It does provide the students with adaptive interventions. And the last one, very, very important, it provides them with differentiated instruction. We're able to identify what they need. So the proposed implementation process, um, as always, we start off with making data driven decisions. How do we go about making those data driven decisions? Well, we start off by having the beginning of year assessment. So at the beginning of the year, students will be administered a test. From there, that data will be disaggregated, and then those tracking folders will begin to be implemented. So we assign the individualized progress learning task after having those one-to-one conferences. And then, of course, students use it through the course of, at least at Crawford Elementary, our students use it for a 6 weeks period, because after every 6 weeks we do have what we call reporting period assessments. So after each reporting period assessment, that data again is disaggregated, it's analyzed, and it's reviewed for student growth. Did the student learn? Did the student master what they are supposed to be mastering? And if not, then we need to go back and tweak it a bit. So we know that after each reporting period assessment, that data analysis component is done, and students are assigned their areas of refinement based on the assessment data. And then they work on it. 6 weeks later, we repeat the same process. If students have mastered those techniques, then they move on to new areas of refinement. If they have not, then they repeat those that they still need to work on. So, in summary, with high stakes state accountability used to rate campuses based on student performance on standardized assessment in third through fifth grades, it is imperative that educators be fully equipped to provide scholars with individualized, targeted, differentiated instruction to meet the academic needs, with the goal of enhancing student achievement, which has a direct correlation in the accountability rating system, and to prepare students academically as well as continue to work diligently to close achievement gaps. Educators must be able to prepare our students to be self directed and productive members of society. That is the goal. Yes, we have them for 1 year. We are expected to teach them what it is that they're supposed to learn. But the goal is for our students to be self directed and productive members of society, holding them accountable to their learning, holding them to be able to be self monitors, and of course, being able for them to track their own progress towards their goals. That in itself is imperative. So, are you ready to transform your instructional practice and begin to use this? If you have any questions, please contact me at olga.balderas01 at utrgb.edu. I do want to thank you for taking the time to listen in, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you for your time.